Welcome to Multiple Offers, a real estate show with competing perspectives. Today we are going to be talking about playing for a team.
Put that coffee down.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
How'd you get the gig? Oh, they were hiring. It was only a 2-week course.
I will sell this house today.
What are you, some kind of real estate agent?
Oh, he's a realtor. There is a difference somehow.
This is Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
Guys, it is episode 18. As always, I've got Matt Brabbins with me. My name is Jeff McLennan. Jeremy Ray is on vacation, so filling in for him today, we have Jay Hazelwood. Jay is a realtor at RE/MAX Advantage with us. In a previous life, he was a mortgage broker. He's born and raised in New West, and Jay is on a team, and we're going to be talking all about the decision to either work with a team of realtors or with a solo agent today, so he'll bring lots to that. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks, guys.
What's going on?
Oh, stuff and things, summering around, getting ready for the fall market.
Are you in full summer mode?
I'm getting out of full summer mode. As of like a week ago, I was away and just sort of getting back in the swing of things and just getting set.
I feel like that's what everyone's doing this week.
Yeah.
What was the best thing in summer mode?
Best thing in summer mode was when it was sunny and not smoky. Getting out on the lake and having a little float around and. Yeah, then the smoke came in and kind of put a damper on that, but yeah.
Yeah, that smoke was gross.
I think I've still got the black lung a little bit.
What'd they say? Like, it was the equivalent of smoking 7 cigarettes a day?
Yeah, the number kind of moved up and down depending on how bad it was.
And who you were talking to.
I don't know if I've ever smoked 7 cigarettes in a day, but I feel like that would feel worse.
Yeah. Matt, what's up with you?
I was going to talk about how I noticed that no one's around, not just in real estate, but in town. Like, this week is really just dead.
Yeah.
But what I'm more interested in talking about is something that came up last night. I got my cabin is up in Tulameen, and we have a Facebook group there. And somebody posted in the group that their cabin is up for sale.
Okay.
Everybody gets excited.
And they didn't list with Matt Brabbins.
And that's okay. So they put it up, and it sort of checks a lot of the boxes. My brother-in-law and sister are kind of thinking of buying a place
cool.
up there. So they consider it. So it's just if a listing comes up, they want to know about it. So she's like, this isn't on MLS. This is just here on the Facebook. And, send me a message if you want any details or more photos. So she puts up one exterior photo. It's 1,300 square feet, 2 bedrooms, no photos, no price.
That's some old school real estate sales.
I was like, is this like 1996 real estate? Like, seriously.
That's the old newspaper ad technique.
Yeah.
Call for details.
I was so annoyed. So then she gets all these messages because everybody who's in Tulameen wants to know because we're all just curious what the appetite is and where our values sit. And so she's getting like bombarded with all of these comments. PM'd you. Send me details, please. Send me detail, please. And then by the end of the night, last night, she puts in a note that says, thanks so much for all the interest. I can't get to all of you today, so I'll get back to it tomorrow.
Like, you could just post it in the thread.
Then that's what I said. I commented. I was like, maybe you could post just the price. And then people would know if it's in the realm of affordability for them, and then they will inquire.
And then your inquiries aren't going to be just looky-loos.
Yeah.
Who just want to know the price.
So annoyed.
How did she respond to your comment?
I got no response. No comments in this now 30-comment thread have any likes to them whatsoever, except for mine, that now is up to about a dozen.
You're the champion of the people.
You've also now been added to her mailing list, and you're going to receive monthly updates with stuff you don't care about.
With her for sale by owner.
It's so frustrating. It's like, I don't know. She's not the first person to do this in town. So clearly somebody's talking around the coffee shop about how they think this is some brilliant model. But we live in an era of information. Jab, jab, jab.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vee reference for you guys there. I know both you go and got that.
I got it.
Yeah.
It's more for the audience.
Right hook.
So a little more give before you want to get. Man, I was so annoyed. Well,
this is part of the problem too when people don't sell things on a regular basis and then jump into it is she may have, like, if you had told me, hey Jeff, I'm thinking of doing this thing, I would have said to you, you're going to annoy everybody who wants to buy your home. Whereas she may have had no idea right? She's maybe just thinking like, oh, well, it'll be good. I want to have conversations with the people who are interested. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's what's on my mind today, and I'm actually like wearing it. I am frustrated. I'm physically annoyed by this. So I hope it goes away soon enough. So we'll carry on. Jeff, what's new with you, my friend?
Well, I had so much fun last night. So a client of mine, they were short for a team of trivia at. Is it District Tap House? Is that the new Sapperton?
Yeah,
I think that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Sapperton District Tap House. Yeah.
So I've got the words out of order.
No, I think they're in order. You just forgot the Sapperton bit. Although I don't know if that's necessarily part of the name.
I don't think
not,
that's in the name.
No.
So
Okay.
Once a week on Tuesdays, they do trivia night, and it is so much fun. And I'm totally biased because we won.
Of course, it was fun.
Yeah, and we got a free flight of beer for winning.
You had to share a flight of beer?
Yeah, but
Did you each get your own individual shot of beer?
They brought 4 flights, like four glasses in the flight, and then we had cups because there were only 5 of us, but everybody wanted to try a little bit of everything, so we just pour into cups and whatnot.
Okay.
But it is fun. I had no idea. And it was packed. Like the place was busy,
and everyone in there is intended to be participating.
Well, I ran into another client when I got there, and I immediately walked over to him, and I'm like, Ian, I'm going to crush you tonight. You should have invited me. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's trivia night. And he's like, oh, cool. And he stayed and played, and we crushed him. But I don't know that everybody knew that there was trivia night, but everybody got into it. And there definitely were people who show up every week. Like the team that I was playing with, they show up every week, and they're like, okay, we got to watch out for those guys and those people over there. And there was one guy whose team name was Sean. I hope his name was Sean. And he was just sitting by himself, which made me I thought he would be a contender for sure. I'm like, you came to trivia night by yourself? Like that dude's serious.
Yeah.
He maybe doesn't want people on the team because they're not good enough.
Yeah, they're just going to hold them back.
Yeah. But it was a really good time, and I think if people are looking for something fun to do on a Tuesday night in New West, it's definitely they should put that on their list and give it a try.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. So that's my news. Do we have news this week, Matt?
Oh, I found some news.
All right.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
I got a news flash for you, Walter Cronkite.
I am enlightened.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
This is Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
The news today is an article that was posted on a variety of sources, again, like every time. I noticed that every time I talk about the news, I tend to quote either the Province or the Sun.
Okay.
And I thought maybe some of our listeners would think that I should go elsewhere. But turns out they're always talking about the same thing. It's just how they present it.
Right, I see. Like once one paper grabs it, they all kind of run with it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So it's just presented different ways. And I tend to go to the Province only because I find they have, people will probably disagree with me on this, higher journalistic standards. So I feel when, not compared to the Sun, the Sun and the Province both have a high standard. The Sun actually, for me, it tends to go into more detail. So for the purpose of our show, is actually too long of an article to try to dissect.
Okay.
Just to throw a couple tidbits out there.
Right.
Same thing goes for like Globe and Mail or some of those other ones, right? So the Province does it in a more condensed format, but I trust the information they put out there versus some of these other sources, which is exactly the point. I'm gonna quote the news, but I also think it's funny. I got this article from Daily Hive, and it's probably like 600 words, but 200 of them are just repeated. They repeat one sentence 4 times.
Okay.
In this short little
must be
piece.
A really important sentence.
It's just, so the point of the article is that the headline reads, BC has the fastest rising home prices in Canada. This was published yesterday.
What?
This is in reference to the recent stats report released by CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association.
Yeah.
They've released their stats for all of the country, they say. And I'll boil down the article's results to essentially one thing. So they say BC has the fastest rising prices in Canada. The region that is the fastest is Fraser Valley. It's at 13.8% year-over-year growth. We're talking July.
So we're talking the relationship from today from a year ago.
July 2017 versus July 2018.
So even though prices are down since February, they've still gone up higher.
Yeah, and that's how housing stats
and especially in the Valley, I guess, too.
Probably, right? So there's Valley is growing the fastest at 13.8%. Second fastest is Victoria at 8.24%. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. But I always like to understand my sources. So I'll let you guys comment on the news here in a moment. But that's essentially the guts of the news article. It's that
and they just repeat it.
Yeah, region number 1 is Fraser Valley. Region number 2 is Victoria. Vancouver isn't falling according to this. It's just there. But I was like, okay, well, what are the regions? What are they? So I actually went and pulled the report because I was curious to look at it. This report is so flawed.
Yeah.
It's based on MLS data that's collected and using the home price index. And we've talked about this on previous episodes, but it's only the boards that use data that allows them to create a home price index. So the BC stats, when I look at it and they provide the regions, there's nothing for the interior. Like Kelowna, Kamloops. Like if you don't include Kelowna, as part of a comparison in BC, we're not really giving a very fair representation of the province. If all we're doing is we're talking about, Lower Mainland Metro Vancouver plus Vancouver Island, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not fair to say that.
Is this comparing to the whole country, or are we just comparing BC?
Well, the author of this article is calling it BC because it's taking the only data that's available for BC.
So I guess the areas where there's no data is not skewing it down. It's just not available, period.
Not contributing.
Yeah, right.
So it creates incredibly skewed data.
Yeah.
Because imagine if we added northern BC and the interior and, all of this, Kootenays and this kind of stuff, right? So it's not represented. And the same goes across the country. Essentially, it's only taking data from the boards in the major cities for each respective province. So I thought that was really, really flawed. And they're missing a lot of data there.
I wonder if the writer of the article understands that they're missing that much data and they just went with it, or if they thought that they had everything they need.
Well, this is how all of these articles are written, right? They take the information that's being provided to them and they don't try to break it down like I am. I hate to quote something on our show without knowing the source of the information. So I went and look at it, and then I realized how limited the information was.
Other than being a snappy headline, what use is it? Is the problem, I think.
Yeah, I think all the article really did as far as benefiting the readers is at the very end it quotes a recent Angus Reid poll that we were talking about the other day at lunch about how 30% of renters want prices to go down.
Yeah.
So I went and I read that article. So our next sort of news story is that yes, all homeowners would like prices to go down.
Yeah.
Roughly 10% decrease in value is sort of what is the more common choice. And then the less invested people are in the market, the bigger decrease they want.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So no surprises. And sort of that was the next part that they sort of sent people onto that part. So yeah, prices are still rising in BC and people want prices to go down.
That headline is so deceptive. And I think a really good example of how you can manipulate stats to say what you want to say. Because while that statement is true, based on how they measured it, I don't think anybody who is dealing with real estate in Greater Vancouver right now would say prices are rapidly rising.
Fastest rising in Canada.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know what purpose that headline serves.
Sensationalizing the real estate industry.
Yeah, I guess clicks.
That's it.
Click.
Yeah, and it completely counteracts the story from last week that says prices are falling.
Right.
That here we've had all these significant decreases. So I keep talking about this, how you can spin stats whichever way you want to create whichever conversation you want. And the newspapers are clearly playing that game. Last week was the sky is falling. This week is optimism. And the whole reason why I bring this up for our listeners is that you consume this information from the news as you're hoping that it's going to help you.
Yeah, it's frustrating too because people out there are reading these stories. Like I have a client right now with a home for sale that is priced too high. And we keep having conversations about the fact that it's priced too high because of how the market has changed. And then they see articles like this and they send them to me and they're like, okay, well, maybe I just need to hang on because prices are rising. And you're like, no, like, this article is deceptive. It's technically true, but the way they're measuring, this isn't what's happening. But people, they're selling and they don't want to lose the value of their home, so they want to believe the article. Mm-hmm. And it is deceptive. That article says, like, it's not like they've misinterpreted what that article is saying. It's saying prices are rapidly rising. Well, why is my realtor telling me my price is too high? Well, it turns out that, it's just a snappy headline.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, too, is that if even if they did have all of BC as their sample, that their time frame's off, and it could be that in that time frame, yes, prices are up from year over year or whatever, but when you look at the data from the last 3 to 6 months, then it's showing a totally different story, and that's what people need to narrow in on, and what is more important.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we will continue to break down the headlines and help the consumers understand which news will actually help them in their decisions with their real estate.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. You decide your own level of involvement.
Well, I guess this is a case where we'll have to agree to disagree.
I don't agree to that.
Neither do I.
Wrong.
National debt.
Wrong.
You're enough advocate.
Wrong. With that money, lost.
Very nice words, but happens to be wrong.
You're listening to Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
So way back in episode 4, we talked a lot about how do you pick your realtor. And if you want to go back and listen to it, there is a lot in that episode. But something we did not cover is the advantages and disadvantages of working with an agent who is working on their own versus somebody who is part of a larger team. And there's lots of different team models. And I think one disclaimer we should put forward before we talk about it, and we're going to try and talk pros and cons about both sides, but all three of us are part of two-man teams. So we all do come from a very similar background, although I think when we get into it, we'll see that even within that structure, every one of us has a completely different way of running.
Yeah, all three of our two-person teams are, I think, managed completely different.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't we get into it? So, Matt, what were some things you wanted to talk about what people should be considering with should they work with a team or should they go solo?
I'll start sort of from a high level, right?
Okay.
So that a consumer is looking at this and thinking, maybe it depends on when you realize you're working with a team.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Are you knowingly thinking of hiring a team to represent you as either buyer or seller? Mm-hmm. Or did you just come across an individual who you like or was recommended to you by a friend or someone you trust, and then you discover that they're on a team? And then what does that mean, right? So people look at it from different perspectives. This can be broken down in so many ways. So I've got a few things, but the funny thing is the first thing that comes to me when I think of when I'm talking to a consumer about understanding working with a team in real estate is I worry about the disadvantages more than the advantages first.
Of working with a team.
Yeah, I worry about the big teams. I worry about people getting handed off to a junior agent who's less experienced. Maybe if you're a buyer, and I worry about...
Right, because there are some pyramid-structured teams, like some models where there are 30 people on that team, and there's like a captain, and then it goes down the pyramid.
What do they call those, like the Rainmaker team or something like that?
Never heard that.
There's the guy at the top who just makes the leads rain down on all of his inferior workers or whatever.
I mean, those are the big ones,
yeah.
And that's really where you just get handed off to who knows who it might be. But then there's even the 3 or 4 person team where you've got sort of the senior name who's really recognized in that community,
right?
But they try to put all of the labor, the legwork into their junior agent or their 2 junior agents, and they focus their attention on maybe their long-term clients or the bigger money deals or whatever it is, and you just want to know where you as a client are going to fall.
It's definitely a conversation. Like, there are some questions you should be asking, whether it's a 2-person team or whatever. And I think, one of those is like, okay, well, I've established my relationship with X. Am I working with X the whole way through? Do you guys trade off? Am I going to get assigned to someone else? Like, now that I've signed the listing, am I ever going to see you again? Is probably an important question. And I mean, whether it's big or small teams, everybody does it their own way, right? You might have a big team where team captain, he does all the listing stuff. but you're not going to see him on the buying side of things. He's just works the listings, and he has agents that do the buying stuff. Or maybe you get assigned to one member of the team, and that's your point of contact the whole time. I had one negotiating with a team a few years ago where who you talked to depended on what time of day it was, and it changed every hour. And negotiating a deal was so frustrating.
I bet.
Because I would call in and I'd be like, hey, I'm the guy with the offer on such and such property. They'd be like, we already have an offer on such and such property. I'm like, I know, it's me, but I have a counter offer for your offer. And they're like, oh, well, have you thought about it? And basically we started negotiating every time, and I'm like, okay, I've got an hour. If I can't close this in an hour, I'm starting off with someone new.
Maybe that's their tactic. Is it just trying to frustrate you? And
it was so frustrating. Finally, I got to the point where I'm like, I am only willing to talk to the team captain, and if you want to put a deal together, she's got to call me, because I'm not starting over every hour. This is insane.
Yeah, this is completely counterproductive. So those are my big fears with teams is big and then getting sort of put off handed off somewhere. Now, some listeners would be listening and they're like, well, I have the expensive house in the good neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, you should feel good about yourself, because you're going to get top dog in that team, whoever he or she is. But who knows who's going to be hosting your open house on Sunday?
Yeah, and you might even be okay with all of that stuff, but these are questions you should probably ask before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay, why don't you tell us about your team structure? I think we should all talk about our teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my team is more of a partnership. So there are two of us. It's myself and my mom. And she's been in the business for a long time. And sort of that's what got me into the business. I sort of grew up with real estate. And so we're sort of just like just a 50-50 partnership. Anybody who hires me is essentially hiring both of us. We're totally transparent about that. So everybody is totally aware that they're getting both of us, and it's been very well received for the most part. Usually one of us will take the lead on one thing or another, whether it's a listing or buyer, and we might bounce back and forth a little bit. But for example, you're talking about like negotiations. If I've got a buyer I'm negotiating on a house with, then I'm going to be the one who's going to be seeing that all the way through, although both of us are going to be up to date and we'll know exactly what's going on regardless. Right. So if for example, I needed to head out of town or something like that, if I had something going on, that Allison would be able to pick it up right where I left off and would be just as though I was doing it.
What I really want to add to that too, because you're saying during the negotiation, you're both up to date on what's going on, even though you're the only person who's communicating with your client and the agent on the other side. And I think that's a huge advantage to teams, is that you've got, as they say, two heads are better than one.
For sure.
Right in the middle of a negotiation, there might be good cop, bad cop. There might be a different perspective that you can bring where you're like, oh, okay, I hear that, maybe this negotiation is frustrating you. Why don't you just sort of slow down for a second, Matt, look at it through just a calmer lens. I'm thinking maybe you should just go down this path a little bit and you'll get to where you want to be. And it's nice to be able to have that advice, because when you're an individual agent, there's no one there to kind of look over you, to maybe sort of give you that little bit of support or keep you in check or whatever it is.
Yeah, and if things get off on the wrong foot, you can tag out, right?
Or pass blame.
Oh, 100%. You tag out, and then you're like, I don't know what my partner was doing. Let's stop and start over and get things back on ground one. And yeah, we really do need that thing he was fighting for, but I'm so sorry of how that went. Like,
I don't think I would actually do that, by the way.
Oh, I've totally had a few times where, and both ways, right? Where I've traded out and my partner, who's also my dad.
So let's stop for that for a second. So Jay works with his mom.
Yeah.
And you guys are a partnership.
Yeah.
So you guys in a lot of ways kind of go where each other goes. Not all of the time, but you are very aware of all of the dealings with every one of your clients.
For sure.
Right?
And often we'll do things like listing presentations together so we can both meet everybody involved, and then from there it'll be one or the other of us will do appointments. Otherwise, if we're both doing the same thing all the time, then what's the point in having a team?
Right. But you establish rapport with both of you, and you feel that
you're
even though there's a lead, you're interchangeable in each way.
Yes.
And Jeff, yours is a little different.
Yeah. So and I guess in Jay's model, Matt's example earlier of I didn't know I was working with a team. I guess that probably doesn't happen to you.
No,
very often.
no. Everybody knows going in for the most part. And if they don't, they find out right at the beginning. We tell them all about us, and yeah.
Yeah. Dad and I's model is pretty much the opposite of that. We essentially share marketing. And we will help each other out. Like there's lots of times where one of us needs to be in two places, and the other person has the ability to take one of those positions, and will fill in. But the majority of Dad's clients are people who want to work with Dad, and the majority of my clients are people who want to work with me. And I would say to the point where, like a lot of times when I'm hiring or when I'm signing a listing agreement, when we're going through it, they'll say, oh, like, when do I meet Mick? And I'll say, like, if you want to meet Mick, you're more than welcome to. But if you don't go out of your way, you probably won't meet Mick. He'll be there. He may do some of your open houses. He may do that. But I'm always going to be your point of contact unless I'm out of town. And people, I think one of the nice things about the way we do it is it's kind of nice to have a unified voice that you're dealing with. I do see the advantage of introducing both parties. One of the problems is a lot of times, like to me, one of the biggest advantages of working on a team is being able to split your resources. Real estate can be a very time-consuming business of I can only be in one place at a time, and I need to be here, and here today. I can't do it all. Having a team member to say, okay, why don't you take point with these guys, and then I'll take point with these guys, and away we'll go, works out really well for us, and for the people who decide to work with us, they seem to enjoy it. The biggest advantage of being on a team, though, for us is you're never going to be like, oh, I can't get a hold of my realtor, he's away for vacation or whatever, which would be with all of the team models that we're dealing with. There's always somebody there, and when I go away, I let people know, like, okay, you're going to meet Mick.
It's an exciting time for you guys.
Yeah. Now, Matt, of all of us, you guys are the newest team.
Sorry, the New West guys.
You
pronounced it right. Not newest guys.
New West.
I don't know. I think there might have been a misprint. It looks like newest guys to me.
Yeah, there's a tongue twister in there. How has the transition been? Because both Jay and I think our entire real estate careers, we've been on a team. Like, I've never been a solo agent. So, and you guys do trade off. You're probably somewhere in the middle between our business models as far as...
Yeah, between Jeff and Jay, I'd say I land in the middle.
Yeah.
With Jeremy.
Yeah, your Goldilocks is just right porridge. So when you're getting clients... Well, first of all, have you had clients yet that were past clients when you were an individual?
Yes.
And how is the transition gone to, okay, I was a solo agent, now there's this team model?
Well, with any client that we have now, new or existing...
Yeah.
The idea always is they have one primary point of contact.
Okay.
So that there's some consistency there.
So you do establish, like, okay, Jer's on point with these guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it can come for a variety of reasons. It might be that, well, we've got quite a few listings right now, and, Jeremy's on point for 5 of them, and Matt's on point for 1 of them, and he's got a few buyers. So Matt has more capacity, so he's probably the best resource for you to have because, he's maybe a little more available to talk about listings. Or it might just be that it's in Jeremy's old building he used to live in, the Murano Lofts, right? His favorite building. Well, he's going to be the point man on every one of those.
Yeah, he's got that locked down.
Yeah, so even if it was maybe one of my clients, I might be like, guys, I want you to speak with Jeremy because he's got just all this extra special insight. So there are circumstances where we might spin it different ways, but we want them to have one point of contact. But we also do the Jay and Allison thing where at the beginning, everybody new meets both of us. Okay. We establish that rapport and that relationship. So in the event that person is unavailable because they're spending time with their family that day and it's their day off, or they've gone on holiday or whatever it is, there is already a certain level of established trust with the second person who could come in. So that's where that comes in with clients. But with all my past clients, I mean, really, they just come to me and I just say to them, oh, hey, by the way, you've probably noticed I've teamed up with somebody. His name's Jeremy, good agent, very competent. He's an equal partner. He's not a junior or anything like that. And if for some reason I go on holiday or whatever, you got a good agent here who's going to take care of you and is fully aware of what's going on all the time throughout your deal, like what you were saying, Jay, right?
Yeah.
Kind of always knows what's going on, even though you don't hear from Jeremy, he knows.
Right.
So he's a good person to just kind of fill in.
I think that's so important. When I talk to people who are unhappy working with teams, other than just, I wasn't a good fit, it seems to be I was handed down to somebody who wasn't an equal partner. Like I thought I was hiring so-and-so, and then he passed me off to his minion. And I think nobody wants to feel like they're getting the lower end model, for lack of a better phrase. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. Especially when I think a lot of real estate teams throughout all of Metro Vancouver, they're looked at as being, essentially more successful than individuals, right? Because with economies of scale, you have bigger marketing. Sure. So you have you do tend to do more business.
If an agent has 30 people working for him, he must be a big deal.
Yeah, you clearly figured out something that you're doing right, and you're getting a lot of volume. So you may be getting hired based on your past track record that they want you because your name is associated with this success.
Yeah.
So when they don't get you, certainly that feels like a demotion, right? And that could be a bit of a challenge there with teams. So I want to go back to one thing though, because I'm working with this new team, and you've asked about challenges of working with moving into it from being an individual for a few years, and as a full partnership where we are equals. It is challenging sometimes.
Is it hard not to be the dictator anymore?
Well, no, because we're both always going to share our opinion.
Yeah.
And eventually we just have to decide how to do it. But we do have maybe different approaches to negotiating or some of those things. Oh. And I did learn recently that I was on holiday and Jeremy started a negotiation and then I finished it. And we did not approach it the same way, and it didn't look so good. So the learning from that is probably make sure whoever starts it finishes it,
right.
Or whatever it is. And make sure that that's consistent there. The other thing is, and I think we've talked about this at the very beginning of our series here, the podcast, is when I introduced myself, is I started in this business on a team.
Right.
And I started kind of as a junior agent.
Like apprenticing almost.
Yeah, it was more of an apprenticeship role, and where I had to go everywhere that Jerry went and do everything, plus do all of my work.
Yeah.
And learn everything that I possibly could from him in a couple years before he retired, and then handed everything over to me. So that was a weird one, because now the clients again liked it because Jerry's here, he's overseeing all of it, but then we got this guy running around working super hard and kind of being everywhere, and the clients seemed to appreciate that as well. They were never getting handed off to me.
Right.
But it was different because there was one person who was the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to mention as an advantage to a team. When there is a hierarchy and there's a boss, the people who do work under them, maybe it's a minion as you described them, or a junior agent, but they have way more accountability.
Right.
Boss has accountability too, though, because they're responsible to other people. And then the junior agents, they go, well, the boss is going to come to me this week and say, did you call these people and make the proper follow-ups? Have you done all of the tasks? Because I have created a successful model that will help our clients succeed if you do all of these things. And as an individual agent, you can sometimes be like, man, this week's tough. Like, I just didn't get to these 6 or 7 things. But the boss is going to look at you and go, check your boxes.
Right.
Get the work done.
Yeah, because when you're in real estate, traditionally, unless you have a boss, nobody comes in and is like, hey, did you do all the things you were supposed to do? You just, if you don't do those things, you just don't get paid because you didn't sell anything.
Yeah, or your client looks at you and says, I don't feel like you did a very good job for me.
Right.
You told me you were going to keep the post sheets outside of my listing full all of the time, but you forgot because you ended up having a really busy week of appointments and you didn't reload this. And it might be a small thing, but as a team where you have one other person there who's below you, whose job is to monitor these things and run around and do that stuff while you go and get clients, sometimes more of that little stuff gets done on a very defined schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you guys think there are any advantages to not working with a team? Let's be fair.
I feel like some of the things that people talk about is you're always going to be getting the same person.
Yeah.
Although I've definitely had dealings with agents on the other end where, agent A goes out of town and I've got nobody to get in touch with because they didn't really leave me any info. So I'm trying to, write an offer on their listing, and I'm sending them messages through our like touch base system or making phone calls, and eventually it comes out that they're away, and I've got to get in touch with somebody else. But that I've turned it into a con, but yeah, anyhow, yeah. So I guess that is one thing where they say that they'll always be the point of contact, which I mean, generally we have as well anyhow, but yeah, what else?
I think depending on the size of the team, there's probably some merit to not being a tiny cog in a giant machine. Like, I would imagine if you're hiring a realtor who's an individual, and they're doing a good amount, like Courtney on last episode talked about how she prefers that she's a boutique realtor. And I think one advantage to using a realtor who is good at what they're doing but small is you're going to get a lot of attention. Whereas on some of these big teams that are doing gigantic volume, you may or may not be the highest priority thing that week or that even month.
Yeah, and you need to fit in. Again, I've talked about their defined system. You need to fit in within the parameters of that. So you're getting your phone call Tuesday at 4:00.
Right.
And we're talking.
Yeah.
The rest of the week I'm busy because I have 25 other phone calls to make.
Yeah.
Versus an individual agent who is connected with their local market but doing less volume, but really intimately connected with their client, their one transaction. Maybe they've got 2 or 3 listings at a time, and they are just deep in as far as they can go, just monitoring everything specifically to do with those listings and giving them like specific attention.
That's an interesting point that kind of gets away from teams versus individuals. I don't remember, in episode 4, did we talk about whether or not it makes sense to go with the biggest guy in town? Was that, did we get into that at all?
I don't remember that we did.
I don't remember getting into that at all, but there's definitely, I think no matter what agent you hire, whether it's the biggest person or a small person, I think asking the question, like, how much time do you have for me, is really worth thinking about before you hire somebody. And what is a reasonable expectation? Are you going to call me every day? Are you going to call me once a week? Do I have to call you? Like, how are we going to communicate? And do you have time to communicate with me at the level that I want to? Because you might be totally comfortable as a listing, like having your place for sale, and your agent calls you once a week with an update. Or you might want to know an hour after every showing. Well, what's the feedback? Are they capable of that? Because they may or may not, no matter what size they are.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we've covered a lot of what I thought was good core content for listeners thinking about a team. But Jay, do you have anything sort of on your radar there that you wanted to bring to the discussion?
Well, I think we've sort of covered it all already, but I think one of the biggest things, if somebody's considering hiring a realtor, especially if you're looking at teams, is just to know what sort of team structure they have and how you're going to be how they're going to be dealing with you, and whether they're going to be passing you on or point of contact, etc.
Right.
Yeah, and just as you had mentioned, there are so many different sort of styles of teams, and just knowing exactly how you're going to be dealt with is a huge thing. And a lot of people might not understand that.
I'm looking at my notes here too, and one thing that we haven't talked about that has always been helpful to me. No, I do it in our office anyway. We've talked about how our office is collaborative. We can share information and ask for advice.
Yeah.
But when you are a team and you're both signed on as a designated agent for the seller, you can share all of the details with another person.
Right.
Right. You can, all of that confidential information is now in-house. It's within the minds of 2 different agents or more. And I find that's really helpful sometimes when maybe you're having a tough time thinking of the right price for a property, asking price or pricing strategy, or just how does my listing fit into the marketplace? And as one individual, we all have our own opinions.
And we all have our own blind spots.
Yes.
I've never finished a CMA without running it by Dad and being like, hey, what do you think of my price here? And most of the times he looks at it and he's like, yeah, I'd price it exactly the same place. But every once in a while, he's like, oh, you didn't throw this property in there. Why didn't you think of that one? And that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've got as a big advantage when you're in there as a team. For me, it's just always been helpful because it's impossible not to kind of, I guess blind spots is a great sort of phrase, but just second guess myself a little bit every time I'm looking at it. I go, I always get a gut feeling early on when I'm pricing a property, but then I want to prove it.
Yeah. Right. And is that confirmation bias, or is that like, it's nice to have another set of eyes for sure.
Yeah. So I really like that. I've talked about it with negotiating. I've talked about it with pricing, just being able to soundboard ideas off of somebody who's internal and you can share all of the confidential information with, instead of being like, hey, so Jeff, I have this 2-bedroom. I can't tell you exactly. I'm in kind of a difficult situation with the seller, but I can't tell you what's going wrong with them. But if you were in this situation that I can't tell you exactly everything about, what do you think you would do?
Yeah. And in fairness, at this table, we have those conversations and we do our best.
Yeah. I feel like you can get more out of your trusted colleague when, they're in the inner circle.
Yeah.
Right. So that's been a good one for me there.
I think going further on perspectives too, just having sort of different backgrounds on things and being in different age groups, gender, etc. I think just you can have so many different varied.
So the New West guys are screwed. Same
exactly.
age, same gender, same social circles.
What we're noticing here is that there's a lot of diversity in teams, big, small, the way the dynamic is with the partnership with different people. So there's a lot of choice for consumers in the marketplace. And then we understand, too, that individual realtors bring them a lot of options as well. And understanding what structure you're walking into and who or what you're hiring, team or individual, is going to be something that you really want to know before you dive in.
I think that when it all boils down to one of the biggest things when choosing a realtor, whether it's a team or an individual, is just do you get along? Do your personalities sort of mesh? And and that's one of the biggest things. Like could you be friends with this person? I mean, you're not looking to get a friend out of it necessarily, but I mean,
Says the friendliest guy in real estate.
But I mean, I'm serious though. Like you need to be able to communicate on the same level and get along.
I think that's completely right, Jay. I think the trick is everything that applies to an individual agent still applies to a team.
Yeah.
But you need to, like Matt said, know that you're hiring a team and make sure that you're not just in line with that one individual agent, that you're in line with whatever the whole model is. So there's kind of almost more responsibility, I think.
There is. And I guess now I have to add to this because I feel like Jay's made such a good point about making friends with your agent or knowing that you could be friends with them.
Yeah.
It's just devastating to find out that that's the person you connected with and that is not now your primary point of contact.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really what you want to avoid. I think for me, as a summary of this whole topic, that's what I want the consumer to avoid.
Yeah. Make sure you ask the right questions.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
How's it working out for you? What? Being clever?
Who knows where thoughts come from? They just appear.
You're listening to Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
Question of the week this week comes from a client again of mine. It turns out it's a really simple answer, but I couldn't answer it on the spot. And I thought, well, this is at least something that we should all be aware of.
Did you think of the answer as soon as you left the client?
Absolutely not. No, it required research.
Okay.
So I will ask you and you can see if you can answer, but I researched and made sure I had the answer before we...
So this is more like test of the week. You know the answer and you're going to see if we know.
Well, the client asked the question. I think it's a valuable question for listeners in a small segment.
We'll get back to you in 2 hours.
Yeah. Jay, get on your iPhone.
So
you don't have an iPhone.
We're breaking things down. We're thinking of making an offer and the concept of foreign buyer taxes on their mind. And it's
I'm not going to know the answer to this.
I don't know the answer to this.
Okay.
But it was that he says, well, there's the two of us, and I've been living and working out of Canada for over 5 years. That's where all of my income has been coming from, has been the States. Mm-hmm. Does that affect me with foreign buyer tax?
Are they a Canadian citizen?
So he is a Canadian citizen?
He is a Canadian citizen.
But he's not a resident.
Well, he's not active. He has not actively lived in Canada for 5 years. And all of his taxes, well, I shouldn't say, I don't know how his taxes are structured. I just know all of the income came through, in the States where he was working.
So the correct answer is you need to talk to your accountant.
I'm pretty sure, though, as long as you're a citizen or living as a permanent resident, that you don't have to pay any foreign buyer tax.
But Jay is correct.
But was he a permanent resident? Sorry, maybe I missed that.
No, they're a Canadian citizen.
He's a Canadian
living
citizen.
abroad.
And it turns out Canadian citizen, full stop. No foreign buyer tax.
That's just end of discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah. So even if I'm living in London buying an investment in Canada, as long as I'm a Canadian, I will never pay foreign buyer tax.
Correct.
Fantastic.
So good to know.
Yeah, short, sweet. Good question of the week.
Thanks, Eric.
I'm glad I knew that one.
That's why I brought you on, Jay.
It's story time with Jer.
Great story. Compelling and rich.
It's not always my story?
No, it's not always your story. What if Matt has an awesome story to tell?
Well, he can tell it to me or write it down and I will paraphrase.
This is Multiple Offers, a real estate show.
Okay, so this story is actually an update to something I talked about last episode. So, Jay, I'm sure you listened to the episode.
100%, yep.
Yeah. But I was dealing with an agent who we'd been negotiating for days and days and days because she didn't have somebody watching her business while she was away, and she was on this gigantic hike.
Right, so she should have had a team.
Yes. So we're negotiating. Finally, I get a text message from her. I'm back in town. And then all of a sudden, everything starts moving fast. It's like a normal negotiation again. It's amazing. We send a counter in to her in the morning, and it's like she's gone again. We don't hear anything. And midday, she sends a question saying, you mentioned that the elevator needed repairing. I forgot to put a holdback in the clause. I'm going to have to add that to the contract. Now, there was a lot of money negotiated off this price. And so I responded, because we talked about it and you didn't put it in there, I assumed you had already factored that into the price, and that's why we're entertaining it at this price, because there's a $10,000 bill. We thought, like, the price we're offering you includes the fact that you're going to have to pay a $10,000 bill.
Right.
So I hear nothing back. Hours go by. And I have never had this happen in real estate. Another agent calls and says, I have an offer for you. And I'm like, okay, I've been negotiating for days. But the agent is here. Let me see what I can do. He's like, I'm writing. I'm going to send it over to you right now. I email the other agent. Our counter offer is retracted. At the same time I'm emailing that, she emails me the accepted offer.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I literally finished sending, hers popped up in my email.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had to call, Gail's our manager at the office, and I had to call Gail, and I'm like, how does this work? And Gail's like, you got to look at the timestamps, because in case people don't know, this is something I think most people don't know. It doesn't actually matter what time you sign that contract. It matters when it was conveyed. An offer can be pulled off the table at any point until it has actually been conveyed to the listing agent. But they were like ships passing in the night. And we looked at the times, and they were like, first of all, there was no timestamp. She must have been sitting there in person at her office with the client as she did it, because it wasn't DocuSign or anything. There was no timestamps on it. And Gail kind of looked at the emails, and she's like, I mean, you can lose plus or minus a couple minutes in translation. I don't think any judgment. I think you've just got an accepted offer. And we did. And I mean, at the end of the day, the client, we took the other one as a backup offer, which put us in a really nice position when they wanted to come back to us about stuff, and they ended up removing subjects. But what a weird situation.
Jeez, yeah. And with emails, like if it is that close, is there it's not down to the second a timestamp either. So they could happen in the same minute, even if one's...
Yeah, I think if it was within probably even 10 minutes, a judge would probably say no, these guys signed it. You had an offer.
Yeah. Yeah, I would see them looking at it through that lens, especially all the time that was gone into it and what was communicated, they'd say.
I think where a judge would side on the seller's behalf, and I'm not a lawyer, but my opinion is that if you could look at it and be like, no, they clearly received the email, then signed the offer, and then sent it to you. Like if they went through the whole process after they'd received the email, and you could make an argument like, look, this is 10 minutes later. I've got a read receipt. They got it and decided to sign it even though it had been retracted. At that point, I think you could make a case to a judge, although what a judge would decide is probably up to the judge. So
yes, and probably not worth pursuing.
No. And I mean, our backup offer was a little bit higher, but not
enough to make you cry at night.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys.
That's a good story. That
was nuts.
Yeah, I've got a little add-on to story time because you were saying, hey, last episode we talked about this, and then it reminded me that there's something else from last episode we wanted to mention. Just a little shout out to Mike Kelly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, one of our listeners, Mike Kelly, was...
Okay, Matt, stall for time while I figure this out.
He was very astute when listening to our segment on buying pre-sales. And Courtney was talking about how you get pre-approved during your 7-day rescission period, but then you also have to be aware that whenever the completion actually comes from the project, if it's a year later or 2 years later or 3 years later, the bank needs to approve you again. And we were telling stories like, and Jay, you've probably heard of this stuff, where, don't go buying an expensive car right before this new project completes, changing your credit score and all the rest of it, because people have done it and they get declined.
Or don't apply for many, many different credit cards, etc.
Yeah, because you have to do essentially completely redo your application for financing. But Mike has informed us that we were not entirely right on that advice.
Yeah, so Mike sent in a message just saying...
and who is Mike?
Okay, so Mike Kelly is an RBC mortgage specialist. He listened to the episode and he sent us just a quick note saying, how amazing the episode was, but that he just wanted to let people know. Courtney mentioned that you had to get requalified, and he said that with a lot of lenders, that is true, but RBC does have a package. It's called the No Look Back program, and they can hold whatever they pre-qualify for you for 36 months currently, and they're actually doing a trial right now to hold some buildings as long as 48 months. He said the larger, taller buildings are the ones that they're starting with the trial run at this other one. And if people have any questions about that, maybe we could put Mike Kelly's contact info in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put Mike's info in the show notes, and and maybe if any other listeners realize they want to fact check me, go ahead.
Yeah,
if it's not only RBC, we're certainly interested in learning that.
Well, and we're definitely not saying it's only.
Yeah.
Just that's what Mike works for RBC, and he was like, "Hey, wait a second, that's not how it works for us." So, and I think that's worth noting for people for sure.
Absolutely. So, a good little add-on there. Appreciate that feedback from him. Very, very helpful. And I will say that after 2 weeks without Jeremy Ray joining us on the show, I'm going to give the best guarantee I can that he will be back next week.
So just tell us the truth, Matt. Did you lock him in your trunk? Like, where's Jeremy, Matt? Where's Jeremy?
So you remember earlier when I was telling you we had some disagreements about how that negotiation went?
It went really poorly.
Yeah, we got in a bit of a scrum. And he's been telling people he fell down the stairs, but it's better if he just stays somewhere for a little while.
Wow. Okay, well, hopefully we'll have Jeremy back next episode to defend his honor, and it'll be really good to have him back. Jay, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jay.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
You can find me at Remax Advantage. Our office number is 604-526-2888. You can find me on the interwebs, thehazelwoodteam.com. I'm on the Instagram, the Hazelwood Team as well, Jay Hazelwood. I don't know. Google me. Google me up.
Cool. And Matt and Jeremy, if he's still alive, are at thenewwestguys.com. You can find me at realestatennewwest.com. That's going to do it for today. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please think about leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helping us find new listeners, and we really appreciate that. And we will see you guys back here next week. Now, Jay, you posted some sort of scientific concoction on Instagram. What are you making in your basement? What's happening over there?
Well, not the meth.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I was making beer. So I'm very, very much a beginner. So I had some help from my brother-in-law came over, and he's been making beer for years and years and years. And so he sort of walked me through the whole process, and we got one of those big sort of turkey fryers connected to a propane tank and put it out on my back patio and fired her up and did a boil. And now I've got sitting in my basement a batch of hopefully what will be an awesome sort of golden Belgian style strong ale.
How long does it take before you know whether you succeeded or not?
That's a really good question.
Thanks, Matt.
It's looking like will have been about 2 weeks. I'm about a week and a half in. So this weekend we'll get to sort of bottling. I've got to sort of test the specific gravity, which I think means alcohol content, or it translates to alcohol content. And whether once it's sort of remained the same for a few days, then that's when it's ready to go.
So there is like 2 weeks of just mystery where you set it and you just kind of hope.
Yeah,
There's no way of knowing if it actually is going to taste like beer.
It is. I am monitoring it. I've got like it's really just sitting there in my basement. I've got like a little thermometer thing that just sort of gets taped to the side essentially, and we're trying to keep it like right around the same temperature, which is it's pretty good, and it doesn't fluctuate in my basement much. And you can sort of see it bubbling away as the yeast is doing its job and gobbling up all the sugars and creating alcohol. So, it's started to slow down now. So, but yeah, really no idea if it's been screwed up. The only real thing I think, as I said, I'm totally a beginner at this.
Yeah.
But if it got contaminated in some way, then that could throw off the whole thing. But as long as we kept everything clean and sanitized, then keep it clean, use protection, then it should be okay.
So. Is it less high risk? Like, if you make moonshine and you make it bad, like people can go blind.
Right, yeah.
Is beer lower risk than that?
Yes, because the alcohol content will never be as high as moonshine, so I don't think you can go blind from that.
It'll just be gross?
Yeah, you would taste it and it would be disgusting and you'd throw it out because you don't like it, but you could probably still have a few.
Moonshine is always disgusting.
Although I guess if it's got a lot of bacteria in it, maybe it would make you feel kind of rotten. I don't know.
What kind of beer did you make?
It's a Belgian style golden strong ale.
Yeah.
So the strong part means it's going to be stronger than the usual.
Yeah. I think it'll be like somewhere in the sort of 8-ish% range, but we'll see once we test it out and are ready for bottling.
When will you be giving Steel and Oak a run for their money?
Yeah, I'll be selling out of my basement, and this weekend, I guess.
Okay. Matt and I think we'll be your first customers if you'll have us.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I'm allowed to sell, so I'll just be giving away freebies. So I'm cheaper than Steel and Oak.
If there's anything I learned from the Drew Carey store in the 1990s, is you just sell tickets to your basement.
That's the way to do it.
You're not selling drinks; you're selling tickets to an event.
Although I'll probably be nowhere near as good as Steel and Oak, but I could try.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we've already started sort of planning out what we're going to do this winter. We're thinking of doing like a Christmas themed porter of some sort, maybe like a cranberry porter or something like that. Kind of,
So could this become like a full on hobby?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've done beer out of kits like in the past. It's been like 10 years probably since I've done it, so I'm way rusty and don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, I'd like to continue doing it. I've got a bunch of the gear, so I'll probably do at least a few a year, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah.